All right, it is 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the Alpha Anywhere Demo and Q&A webcast. My name is Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I am pleased to be joined by Dion McCormick, no relation, who is our lead solutions engineer. Today, Dion will be taking your questions and answering your questions. I'm not sure we have much of a demo here today, but we are pleased to have Dion actually here in Boston headquarters, all the way from Austin, Texas. So it's good to see him when he comes in. So if you have questions, go ahead and please type them into the questions area. It's not actually a questions area, it's a chat area in the WebEx Meeting Center, and we will get to them. We have a couple that looks like it's good to go, but we'll definitely have time for more. So if you've got any questions, now's the time to ask them. So let's get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am here, coming through loud and clear.
Excellent. I'm going to go ahead and share your screen, although I know you probably have a lot to show here. Still puzzling my way through this interface. I will be
I know.
Before long, I will be a pro at this. Let me go ahead and just make you the presenter. You are now the presenter. Passing the... Oops. Ha! Handed it to the wrong person. Oh, my goodness. This may turn out...
Could be a roulette kind of scenario.
The person I asked it to actually asked one of the better questions. So
there you go.
They won't present, but we'll go and grab you. Dion, where did you go here? Dion. Oh, there you are. Hang on. We're going to make you the presenter. Here we go.
There we go.
Sorry about that. Darren is close to Dion, though. They both start with a D.
I know. It's today's letter is D.
The letters, yeah, today. We're in the street. Fantastic.
Very cool. Too funny. Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. As Dave mentioned, I'm broadcasting live from fabulous Alpha headquarters up here. They were so nice as to create a nice snowstorm for me. So I don't know if it's a storm. It's a beautiful snowfall.
It's just so you don't leave.
Yeah, I know. I might be sitting here on the ground, but it's just absolutely gorgeous. Now it's kind of a white, wintry feel out there, so it's a lot of fun. And you actually get to use my cold weather gear. Actually, I came here purposely, not necessarily to meet Alpha, but to get to a warmer climate, because apparently it's about 11 degrees, 12 degrees in Austin, Texas today, and we're up around 30 degrees here, so it's much balmier here in the Boston area than down in Austin. So it works out pretty good. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us. If I could ask you if, the bulk of our meeting... We'll have to... Yeah, it's just we're still working out the audio things here.
Hi.
There we go.
All right. So lots of time for questions, so please take the time to go to your control panel and input the control or any questions you have, and Dave will queue them up, and we'll get through those as many as possible. And if we can't, we'll obviously follow up. And always, if you want to, you can email us at guides, GUIDES, at Alpha Software. We're actually seeing a little more activity on that, so we really enjoy that. So take the time to tell us ahead of time what you would like to see, what you would like to hear, what you have questions about. That's why we're here. I do want to share some news, and wanted to share that I'm not sure how many people had worked with a gentleman by the name of Jim Dusoe. Jim had been with Alpha and had done work with Alpha for over a decade. He was just an incredible talent, and unfortunately we lost him in the last week or so to illness. And so again, just we want to, as a company, as an extended family, to extend our condolences to Jim's family. Jim taken way too young. He was a phenomenal intellect, very bright, did some amazing projects and amazing things with Alpha. And again, we just want to kind of share the news, but Jim was an amazing person, and we're sorry to see him go. And again, hope the best for his family and everybody beyond that. I don't mean to start out with the downside, but he was just really well regarded and liked, and we're going to miss him.
Thanks, Dion. He was a phenomenal person. We'll have a blog post up about him as well. But
yeah. So, it was pretty surprising, and I know he had been battling for a while, but it took a turn for the worse, and sad to hear it. Today, what I'd like to do is the bulk of our time is Alpha Q&A, but I did want to touch on a subject, and it's very powerful. Is that we have started to talk a lot more about TransForm, and beyond that, we have also been talking about the fact that this 2018 is really the year of the API, meaning that we're launching TransForm, which includes an extensive REST API. We will be doing dramatic improvements to the Alpha platform to support API work, and we'll see that sooner than later. We're very excited about that. But beyond that, you were starting to see the fruits of that work coming together very quickly. So I wanted to share something with you today. So again, for people who are kind of new to this, I'm going to take a few moments, is that TransForm is a standalone system that allows you to generate very complex forms very easily, to do complex data collection in the field. And that data is all managed behind the scenes. Both the form definition and also the data itself is managed in JSON. And to get access to that, it's not a traditional database access. Is that the TransForm team has developed an extensive REST API that allows you to interact with TransForm to create new forms, edit forms, put data in, take data out, etc. And one of our key focuses, and this is super critical this year, is that you can use any technology to interface. The nice thing about web APIs is it's really, it's a agnostic, meaning that it's a web API. You got to call it through HTTP, but you can call it from many different technologies and different stacks, which really is powerful because that means you can kind of mix and match things. So if we go into clients that have existing environments that are not necessarily Alpha, then we can work with their existing environments, and it's just where the world is going to. But at the same time, we anticipate, especially for our existing wonderful developer community, that we want to make it easy for you to create value add on top of TransForm. So you may find a client that needs this capability, but we also want to make it easy for you to help them expand it out into a full-fledged solution for what they may need to add the special sauce and things like that. And so we are working towards where, for instance, TransForm will be a data source for lists. So you can actually create a list control, point it to Alpha TransForm, and boom, you pick the form, pick the fields, put it up there, and it's just like working with a database. And that's the thing, is we're going to apply that same easy-to-use philosophy to TransForm that we do there. Another area that's under development, it will be in the reporting area, the ability to connect to TransForm as a reporting data source, just like you do today with SQL databases. But another key area is that, these are for like user interface reports and stuff, but then there's going to be that interactivity where you're going to want to be writing XBasic scripts or put user interfaces on it to push data in or take data out from TransForm. And so we want to make that just drop dead easy to do for our wonderful developer community. And so right now you would have to spend some time understanding what TransForm is and learning the API, but Alpha, and this is in the latest pre-release, is adding functionality to make your life easy. So I'm going into, and again, this is the latest pre-release. Again, always be careful on pre-releases. They're not meant for production environments, so I definitely would play them with them in a different sort of virtual machine or different setup, however you want to do it. But there's a new feature under Tools, Open TransForm API Explorer. And again, this is a new menu item here. And what you're going to see here are all of the APIs that are available from TransForm. And you can type and put in, search for different things from there. And so the idea is we're basically doing two things. So let me go ahead and show you an existing. Let me make an existing issue right here. Okay, let's look at this. Item number 3, which is get users in TransForm account. So, TransForm has its own. So I want to kind of see who's in TransForm. Or actually, a better one is get list of form definitions for the account. So I want to find out what forms are already in my account. So that is the API there. Now, when I click on there, I can go to help, and it immediately talks a little bit about what that API does and what the information is and what the results come back. So the built-in help, you don't have to go anywhere. It's going to be all built into the tool itself. But more exciting, and after I've entered my API key to TransForm, I can just select this, click test, and watch in a few moments. Here is the results of that API call. So you'll notice that there was no error. since no error text, here's the result. And the result is my sample forms that I've been creating in my account. But it gets even better. This is the curl command that allows you to call this and run curl to do it. Notice it's got all the details, everything, all the URLs, how to submit your key and everything else in there. If you're going to be using Node, which some of our clients now are, here is a Node definition that allows you to add this to Node and therefore use Node as interface. And last but not least, and very important, is here is the xbasic command right here. So you'll see you have your API key, your data, and this is basically the xbasic. Look at how simple it is. Pretty straightforward. We've made it really child's play to be able to make that call within code. So now what you can do is copy this code out, add it to your forms, add it to a class library, whatever you want to do, and boom, now you have the ability to programmatically talk to TransForm. So you can use that for pulling data from TransForm. You can create new form definitions using this. You can create form commands. You can get fields in a form. I mean, you just go to town. It's really, really, really fun. And all of these items are available. So this is brand new. Again, it's in the pre-release, so you can check it out there. You enter your API key, and then you can start exercising. And more importantly, once you do that, you have these different pieces that are available here. And we're excited about this for two reasons. One is that it's going to really accelerate how quickly we can do really cool integrations between Alpha Anywhere and TransForm. So we'll start promoting that and allow people to do that quickly. It's also a built-in help system, so when people are starting to learn, they're going to be able to have and do a very simple, kind of learning curve from there. And last but not least is that we're really going to start driving the understanding of, well, how do you use APIs and how do you integrate them and other pieces there. So we're really excited about TransForm because it will really sort of increase the knowledge of our development community of how to use TransForm, how to do those pieces, and go from there. So with that in mind, that is the new TransForm API Explorer. There are more features and capabilities coming very quickly in terms of integrating to TransForm, and we'll keep you updated from there. We'll actually come back after I get a chance to spend some more time with it, is talk about how I could take this and do some other things with it, kind of show you, okay, great, I can get this information, but what would you actually do with it? So I'll have some examples of how to use Alpha to kind of talk to TransForm and do things and make TransForm jump through hoops using Alpha, and I hopefully will spark some interest in some information there. So TransForm coming along really good. A lot of really cool API stuff in development. That's what I've been spending time this week kind of getting heads up on there. And we encourage you to play with this. You can get a TransForm account by going to TransForm Central and doing that.
Go
actually
to alphasoftware.com/transform central, all one word.
Gotcha. And feel free. Free accounts, they're limited, but go ahead and try it out. And then once you have that free account, and this is the important part, I'll actually go here to alphasoftware/transform central. Okay. Now I already have my account. Let me go ahead and log in. Okay. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead there. By the way, I can be part of multiple accounts, like if I have a customer. So when you go in, obviously you have the designer and the other things we've shown, but you go to developer options, get TransForm API key, and then you can say there are different types of keys, but to start out with, you can just say all. And I click all and I get API key. You will get a API key back, and then once you have that API key, it's just a 32-digit character or something like that. Then at that point, I can go back into Alpha, and when I'm in the Explorer, I can enter the API key there, and then I don't have to worry about re-entering every time I use it. Then it'll activate. If you don't, it will say, hey, no API found, please enter it, and you'll be able to do that. But as you can see, when I came here, I went right into login, but there is an option that you can click. And now let me log out of here and see what they say. Yeah, right here. Don't have a username or password? Go ahead and click here, and that will allow you to, by the way, that's my password saver. Just click here, and this will take you through signing up for a sample account, and again, no charge. And we encourage people to start playing with it and kind of get their hands around it, because I think what's going to happen, and we're starting to see the rumblings and we're starting to see it happen, is that TransForm does some things very, very good. And therefore you can you could obviously build anything you can do in TransForm in Alpha Anywhere, but when you get on to get it done quickly, and certain capabilities, it's there. You're just boom, 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 you got it done. But we're also finding that people really want to do a lot more than just fill out forms in the field. They need more of a holistic solution. Well, combining TransForm with these really easy to use integrations in Alpha Anywhere is going to give you a 1-2 punch in the marketplace and with your clients and with your prospects, that you'll be able to deliver very quick, but also be able to deliver a full-featured, full, rich environment for your clients, giving you the best of both worlds. So very excited about that. We'll continue to kind of keep you posted on that. We'll dive into more of a lot of the API stuff as Alpha continues to that. And as always, as new and great features, like for instance, a new exciting one is the new, let's see, where is it? It's, let's go instant. Aha. This one we're not doing today, but we're coming back and we're going to do a demonstration of that. Is right here. This little button right here is sort of like when we started adding offline capability to lists. By clicking a single checkbox, your life becomes so much better. Same thing here is I'm going to do a demonstration and show you how fast and easy it is to build a UX, or to build a mobile platform now that has instant update. And what instant update allows you to do is, once you've deployed it once, now whenever you need to update that app, you don't have to go through the whole PhoneGap build process. You can put it up on your server, and then the app itself will refresh itself. And you have some other cool features like that. So we're going to come back and do a much more detailed dive in there. But again, we talk a lot about TransForm to start of this because we're just launching in there. But we are going to continue to cover both Alpha Anywhere and TransForm, and the combination of the two all together, along with all the API stuff. So we're very excited about this. Is so cool, so powerful, and really is transformational. Even in the test and prototyping phase, it's just, I can't wait to use it. Really solves a lot of problems, really accelerates the deployment and actions and activities of Alpha. So, oh wow, Kate wants to, I'm sorry, I'd love to annotate that, but no, can't annotate that. So great. I guess we're all learning, hitting different buttons and seeing what they do. You might draw like a mustache on me or something like that if I let them annotate the screen.
That could be fun.
That is true.
Excellent.
Great.
Nice. We have some. Well, let's start right in on a question about the API functionality.
Excuse me, how rude.
Oh my goodness, Dan, come on.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to Boston. You're gonna get sick.
Yeah, I know. I know. Oh, by the way, they're making me do this presentation outside. It's really interesting. I mean, I was like, can I come in the building and do it there? No.
You are
sit
not,
outside and do it in the snow.
You're not allowed off the roof until the presentation.
So if I get electrified from the battery or anything, then it's on you.
So someone asked here, has API functionality within Alpha Anywhere, now this is separate from TransForm, has that been improved?
The answer is not yet. We've had the basic functionality, and I'll go ahead and go here. So up to now, when you do APIs, there's two ways to do it. One is through a web reference, where you can click and create a new web reference where you put in a SOAP WSDL. So if you're connecting to a SOAP, you can connect to what's called a SOAP WSDL, and then you can generate the code to talk to a SOAP interface using the web references capability. The other method was within AlphaX Basic, and here, let me kind of show you this, kind of give you an example. So I'm going to go here to my TransForm API, and I'm going to get that same code I had before for account, test. Okay, so check this out. I've got a little curl command right here. I'm going to copy that and copy that to the clipboard. Okay. Now, once I have that curl command, and here's the nice thing about curl, if you ever have to interface with a third-party system, most likely they will give you documentation with examples of curl. That's kind of the industry standard way to say, hey, when you're trying to call this API, here's how you would do a curl command. Because then once you have curl command, you kind of know what to do from that standpoint. But now what you can do inside Alpha is I can go in here to the code editor, and I can go Genie's curl command to XBasic. So I go, I'm in an editor. So in this case, I'm in a script. I could be in an XBasic function on a callback. I could be in an XBasic module or an XBasic class. But we have this cool Genie called a curl command to XBasic. Now I paste that curl command in there and say generate XBasic. And in a few moments, it generates my script right here. And that script has everything I need to be able to call that service and pull back the data and do everything I need to do with it. So we've had that capability in there for a while, and that still exists. That hasn't changed, and that's going to stay there and be available, and we've been very successful using it. But what we have coming down the road is twofold. One is that right now, if you notice, that's about consuming APIs, meaning calling out to a third-party service like TransForm and pulling data in. But we also want you to have the ability to create or publish web services where you can create a set, some capability in Alpha, and then people can call Alpha and then securely talk to and run code and stuff. So we're building the tools to make it easy for you to create that kind of publishing environment where you can do that. And then we also are going to take in, and much like web references, is work on even simplifying the kind of calling, especially in the REST area. SOAP is obviously very popular. We're going to continue supporting it, drive it, but REST is where most people are going. It's just kind of the bulk of APIs out there are more and more REST oriented there. So we're going to actually make it even easier to, instead of just the curl Genie, we'll have other methods to be able to create the infrastructure to call external APIs and then get that data back in there, and we're just going to improve it and make it a lot simpler. So the answer to your question, I know, and I appreciate your patience, is that no big differences right at this moment here, but coming very, very soon. It's in test and it's being worked on, and the team is working very quickly to get it out. And when it does, we're going to be able to give you some. Our goal here with Dave and myself is to make sure when it's ready, we can give you some training, some education, some visibility, show you how to do it, so you're able to take it and run with it very quickly. So not yet, very soon, and when you do see it, it's going to be amazing. And what's also cool about it, and that's very, very important, is that essentially like the REST API here, where once you create a REST API around your system, it's transformational. And that's very important for people to understand, is that it unlocks enormous potential value and really enables what I like to call an ecosystem. So for instance, right now what TransForm does so well is design forms, edit, modify those, and then our filler that makes it easy to use it out in the field. But it doesn't do everything. It doesn't do reporting. It does minimal kind of capabilities on management. It doesn't do workflow. It doesn't do other kind of things that are more sophisticated. I mean, there is elementary pieces of it to support that, but not the level that a lot of people are going to want down the road. So we could have gone ahead and said, great, we're going to build all that in. So give us a couple more years and we'll have all these capabilities and you'll be happy. But you can never satisfy anybody. So by going down the API level and opening up this API and having a robust API around it, we're going to see an acceleration factor that's enormous, meaning that people aren't going to have to wait for us to build every piece of functionality with TransForm. What will happen is they'll be able to take Alpha Anywhere and build their own. They'll be able to take PHP systems, .NET systems, and build extra capabilities. They're going to be able to integrate it with third-party systems and their existing systems. We're going to be able to do things like use tools like Zapier and Microsoft Flow and everything else, and many this ecosystem to be able to do these things. So what an API does is that it dramatically alters the playing field so that you can build an ecosystem around your solution. So when you're out there developing, if you're developing a SaaS solution, by having an API, you now can hook in and other people can add value to your system. If you're working with companies, it becomes easier and easier to integrate with their systems and to integrate with future systems. You kind of set the groundwork to say, hey, now you can kind of divide and conquer. So there's so many cool things that APIs can do and really will have a transformational effect. So that's why we're really driving it on this year, is because we think Alpha is the best low-code and now a TransForm no-code development solution for web and mobile solutions. And now with an API capability around here, you can have all the advantages of Alpha, but then also have the advantages of an ecosystem that could allow you to plug in other things very quickly into your environment without having to go through as much pain and anguish and other things like that. It's just going to be much simpler, and it allows you to build an ecosystem around your solution so you can unlock the value. So we're super excited about it, and the team's working really hard on this, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about this year, and I think once you start seeing it and start playing with it, you're going to find it's really not hard, and because it's not hard, you'll be able to deliver new capabilities, features, value much quicker. So thank you. Again, apologize, I know that was a real short question, but I wanted to kind of give you the feel for what the team's working on and why we're doing it and what the impact will be to you as a developer.
That is terrific. Thank you, Dan. You ready for a hard one?
Yes.
Oh, no, it's a good challenging one. Multi-pieces, demonstrations, maybe even some coding. Let me go ahead and ask you the question. So this person wants to build a home inspection application where a technician goes to a specific location to do an inspection. Now, the client is afraid that the technician might cheat. In other words, they might not even go to the location to do the checklist. So what they want to do is they want to make it so that the technician has to be within, say, 50 or 100 meters, whatever GPS can reasonably do, before they can even open the checklist for that property.
We had something very similar to that, yes, and we do have a solution for that. That's great.
Fantastic.
Excellent question. And the idea there is geofencing. You have a geographic fencing around it, and you want to be able to enable or disable things only within that specific specified area.
Correct.
So what's really cool about that is we actually had a client who they support lifeguards. And lifeguards used their app they developed with Alpha to check in and out, but they only wanted to allow them to check in and out when they were actually at the pool, not at the Starbucks. So maybe there is a Starbucks at that pool nowadays. You never know. I mean,
there could be.
There could be. So I got to be a little careful about that analogy there. But or check in from their house, but their house could be on the pool too. But the idea is they wanted to limit that. So Alpha has built into it. Let me go ahead and go here. Let me go into my control panel, and I'm going to go here and create a new UX here. Oops, I'm on the wrong button here. Okay. So first and foremost, I want, and actually I'll open up an existing one so I'm go a little faster. Okay, first thing I want to explain is that when you build the Alpha solution, Alpha has a lot of pre-built-in capabilities. So for instance, when you're, it's a little different, but it's a variant I want you to be aware of, is that when you're working with a list control and you want to capture the information of when they create or save a record, there's a built-in functionality. If you open your list control, go to Detail View and go to Table Properties, you'll see that there is an option here called Store Location Information when the record is saved. And when you enable that, you can tell it to where to save the data, but you can also tell it, okay, save that data anytime there's an insert or update. So if you were just wanting to make sure when people entered their data, you knew where they entered their data at, that would be the ability to do that. And what that does is it gets encoded and put into fields in the record so you know physically where that is. And that's really powerful for just, I'm out in the field and I'm at a car wreck and I want to enter in information about that car wreck and save it. Well, I don't have to make the user like figure out where they're at and set a button there, etc. I can just say, hey, when you save this record, note what the lat and longitude is and put it into the record so we know where you collected that data at. So that's real simple, and all you have to do is go in and turn that on, map it to your fields, and you can even do location fields, which gives you geometry stuff, and then you do insert or inside or update. Now, the other option you can do, which is very powerful, is that Alpha has the ability, let me go ahead and go to the controls right here, and I'm going to create a button right here. And on that button, we have a very powerful capability. And if you look for geolocation functions, so you can go geolocation functions, okay? So set fields to retrieve data, get accurate position within a designated radius, and update data on a location change. So the idea behind this is this button allows you to trigger go find it. And so I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Okay. And here's the JavaScript. And by the way, I did it in a button, but you can come in and copy this information out of here and put it into your system. But what this allows you to do is set certain fields on your user interface with latitude and longitude. You can also say I want a certain level of accuracy, and if they change it, you can even have it where it continually monitors it, and if they change it, it'll update that information. And then you can tell it, you know, how long, etc. from that standpoint. And just to let you know how cell phones work is that geolocation is successive, meaning that when you first ask the hardware, where am I, it's going to say you're like within a mile. And then over time, it spins up and spends more energy and time getting closer and closer and closer to where you are, i.e. increasing the accuracy over time. So you can denote, like, don't give me a reading until I'm at this level of accuracy. So let's say they wanted a geofence and they wanted to make sure you were within 30 feet of that home. Well, you don't want them within a mile because that doesn't count. So what you can do is say only return the value when you do it. So this is how you would generate that piece here. And then once you do that, you could actually compare your lat and lon against a saved value, and if it's within a certain level of accuracy between what's saved and what's captured by this geolocation function, you can say bing, they can now start filling out the paperwork because they're within a certain distance from the location. So it's all built in. You can initially play with this by just putting doing it manually. So what you do is you put a couple fields on your form. You'd use this button to grab that geolocation feature and compare it and do that. Then once you get to know it, you can actually go in here and view the JavaScript, and you can see here is the actual JavaScript that's being called and the information, and this is the attributes right here. You could copy all this out, and instead of having it in a button, you could put it and have it associated with a list action, or with like they'd go to a certain panel, it would start saying, okay, don't go to that panel until you do this here. But that's using the built-in geolocation functions. It's all built into the system, and it's really easy to use. Just a note is that obviously the person on the mobile app has to have their geolocation enabled. Otherwise, we won't be able to talk to the hardware. But when you put an app on there, it usually says, hey, do you allow this app to do geolocation? Once you do, you're good to go. The other is you're able to then also, in a web browser, it's a little bit loosey-goosey. You can still get location information on a web browser, but there's more restrictions to it. Now, I want to give you one other alternative here. Okay. So that's a built-in geolocation function, but there is another technology that's available. And so I'm going to go into my phone gap area here, and I'm going to say iOS or Android right here, and I'm going to scroll down here. And there is a capability called Background Geolocation LT. Okay, this is a PhoneGap plugin that you use. And the cool thing about this, which is a little different from what I explained before, is that it does background geolocation, meaning that the user doesn't have to do anything in the background. It's grabbing it. And so the use cases people usually use it is, okay, Uber. Okay, I want to know where this car is. So what's going on is you have you enable background geolocation. And in there is a little piece of JavaScript that says that periodically grab the location and then call a JavaScript function to do something with it. So in our case, what we'd say is, okay, once you have the location, call an action JavaScript to do an AJAX callback up to the server and update the server database of where I'm located at. And the cool thing about this will happen in the background, meaning that the user doesn't have to do anything. So one potential option you have is that you could have this enabled and updating values not necessarily on the server but inside the app, And then when you go to try and fill out that form, you can go, oh, what is the lattice background geolocation data? Is it within, the accuracy distance that I want? Sure, go ahead and allow them to go to that panel, fill out those forms, and do those things there. Now, realize background geolocation is kind of going on all the time, so you have to be, it's going to have a little bit more of a power draw, and you may or may not want that. You may just want to say when they're at the place and they go to fill out the checklist, check their location right away at that point in time. But it opens up other alternatives. Like you can kind of basically, the other thing is like with a delivery person, if you have this on, then you don't have to call them and say, hey, where you're at. You know they're at Main and Elm Street, and their appointment in 20 minutes is over there. Again, it could facilitate that Uber-like behaviors where you can kind of track where the person is and have availability of where their location is without having them to do anything. It's just going to happen behind the scenes and update the back-end system. So that's called Background Geolocation LT. And a little bit more coding involved with that one just because you basically install the phone gap, you start it up, and then you set up how, when it gets that information, what it's doing with that information. But that's another alternative to solve that particular issue.
That is terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Here's sort of a general question about grids. We may need to do some research. But anyway, the question is, what can be done to make sure grids load as quickly as possible?
Aha, great. Okay, so grids already, and there's a few things about it, but a couple things. Obviously, first foremost is that grids are already heavily pre-optimized to be able to load data quickly. So, for instance, you could have a million database record row, and it's not going to load the whole million things into it. So it's already got a lot of optimization, and then it uses XBasic callbacks to go back and grab new data to interface on there. But beyond that, you can go in and you can limit what fields are presented. That's less data to be presented on the screen. The more fields you have, and the more complex the interaction of those fields are, the longer the grid will take to load. So if you're doing a whole bunch of, on the fly, if this field is this, don't show this field, because grids allow you to do a lot of really cool tricks to show and hide and change columns and do things like that. But anytime you add that functionality in, it adds extra time because the system needs to do more steps to get that grid to the point where it presents it the way you want it to present. So A, limit the number of fields you have in that grid to whatever's minimal critically required. Secondly, keep the grids fairly simple. Don't try and do really fancy interfaces with them. From that standpoint, keep them just plain vanilla as much as possible. And then obviously the other aspect of it is this, and this is an important part of it. As I mentioned between it, when you build a grid, you could do a table or a view, or a SQL select statement, or a SQL stored procedure. So if you're doing a straightforward, like just a table, not much faster you can get off that. Maybe the filtering may reduce the number of records, but there's not much you can do from there. But if you've gone in here and you've put into, let's say I go to SQL select statement, and I edit that in the query builder, and I add a table here, customer. I add a table here, where's order? Okay, they have a parent-child relationship with, let's see, so let me go customer code, customer ID old. Okay, so basically I've created a parent-child relationship and query within here. So the nice thing about that is I could do that very quickly, and it'll allow me now to select fields from both the customer and the order table, and that's fine. But you don't get the optimization of a database. So if you're going to do something like this, I highly recommend this. Go into your database and create like a database view, or if it's much more complicated, a stored procedure. Then just attach the database or this grid to, say, the view. So notice this, I've got view products by category. So that view is in the database, and it links products and categories so I could do some reporting and things like that. Now, I could have created this in Alpha in the grid very simply by just going open up SQL query and boom, 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 off to the races. But the problem with that is that I don't get all the benefits of doing it in the database, because if I create a view in the database, the database is going to optimize that view and, more importantly, do a whole bunch of caching and other things like that behind the scenes to make it super fast to render that data and send to it. If I do it with an alpha, this grid essentially has to pass that query off to the server, the database server. The database server at that moment will then parse that query, do an analysis, try to figure out the fastest way to deliver the results, and then eventually pull the data and assemble it and send it back to there. But with views and stores procedures, databases kind of compile them and pre-optimize them so that a lot of the work is done. So all it's doing is then running optimized queries against the tables and then sending the data back for you. So definitely, especially if you have a more complex query with multiple tables and this and that, really look hard at putting that into a view or a stored procedure in the database itself, because then the database is going to do most of the heavy lifting and have it prepared, and the grid itself is just saying, hey, give me this view, and the database does the rest. So keep the fields limited. Don't get super fancy in terms of what you're doing with the fields, in terms of doing a lot of dynamic updates and changes and weird things like that. And the last but not least is really look at where's your data coming from and how can you leverage the database to do it. And we've had multiple, really important, I'm glad this person asked this question. This also applies to when you're building a mobile solution. Let me go ahead and open up a mobile solution. In my list control, is that my SQL statement that I'm writing in here, if at all possible, you can put that in the database and optimize it in the database, then you'll see the list controls on like mobile devices will load faster, they'll interact faster, the user will get experience. The same concept. You can either put the work on alpha to send it to the database and then have the database digest it and do it, or you can be smart and look at the query inside the database and say, how can I optimize it, put some indexes on rows, pre-do it with a view or a stored procedure, and then in alpha keep it simple, just point to that and then let the database do all the hard work. And it's pretty transformational how fast you can get. I mean, with a little bit of database work and design, you can take queries that are seconds down to sub-seconds very quickly. And that shouldn't, alpha will do a lot of stuff. It will make it very easy for you, but it's not always the most optimal way to approach it. Often it's important to optimize things at the database level and then use alpha just to point to those objects and capabilities there. So I hope that gives you a few pointers on how you can improve the speed of your databases. Keep it simple and make the database do as much of the hard work as humanly possible.
Great advice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on, just talking quickly about Git. You went over
Yes.
stuff, and someone said they wanted to try, but it doesn't seem to work, using Git, not using GitHub, but using Git along with OneDrive, which I thought probably be a good idea because then it'd be all in one place, but it doesn't seem to let them do it. Have you had any experience trying to use some sort of shared drive, maybe a Dropbox or a Google Drive?
No, I haven't. But what I will do is I will try that. I will, and just by the way, it kind of an interesting thing was that I put all my stuff in a alpha folder under Documents. But I've been experimenting with maybe going back. Originally, a long time ago, and man, just talk about history. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. I used to store all of my folders in the Dropbox, but I found things ran a little slower. And I think it had to do nothing with alpha. I'm not blaming alpha, nor can I do that now legally in my contract. It's like
it's just
also
not a good idea.
Well, all of a sudden you get that. I can't wait till you put up that we're having technical difficulties. It's like all of a sudden he's been cut off. You can't handle the truth. But I think what was happening was that Dropbox was like querying the files, and it just was like fighting, because alpha update files and stuff. It was just kind of
quickly, and then Dropbox is
is kind of catching up and doing its thing. And so, but that was years ago, and I've been tempted to do that. So what I will do is this week I'm going to create a project, create a Git repository, put it in my Dropbox folder, and do a little experiments and see if I have any problems with that. I think I have this OneDrive thing here, but I don't know if I have a OneDrive account, so I'm not sure about OneDrive. But I can commit to Dropbox because I use Dropbox extensively for my kind of pieces there, just historically. But we'll give that a try. There shouldn't be any inherent capabilities. The only thing I'm thinking is that I don't know. You know, maybe it's something about OneDrive doesn't like Git repositories or how they're
Hmm.
managed or pieces there. The only other thing you could ask, give us a little more visibility of where was the problem. Was it you? It wasn't updating the files, the working files, or kind of give us a little bit more flavor of you did X, Y, and Z, and then when I tried to do ZZ, something happened. That way we can kind of get a feel for what the problem was, a little bit more details.
Right.
That would be
Great.
super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And first, good job working on it, trying to use Git. You know, it really is another key important concept that we'll be working on this year is because more and more with team development and just more modern practices for development, using source control is critical for what we're going to do.
Absolutely. Thanks. Just a quick question. For CRUD, can you do CRUD operations with a list using a stored procedure as the data source? Or stored procedures one-way devices for viewing?
Yeah, and the answer on stored procedures is no. You could
Yeah.
do it with views if the views are updatable. That's a
Yeah.
critical element, is that you could actually do it against a view, but the view needs to be updatable. And the best way to test that is actually go into like your database design tool and write a little query to insert or update against your view, and the database will say sorry, yes or no. But a
Right.
stored procedure is a different animal. We really don't have a way to automatically map um, the fields to that stored procedure. So in that case, if you're doing that, when you build your list, what you need to do is use what's called custom here, and then you write a little bit xbasic stub function that will handle the the read, update, and things like that. So you put a little bit more work on yourself, but that's the best I know. There's not really an easy way to do that because we really can't. Stored procedures aren't normalized, meaning if you have a table, you have insert, update, standard SQL work against it, so we can auto-generate that and put that together. But with a stored procedure, well, what parameters need to be passed in? What is the command to that stored procedure? Like, do you have a separate stored procedure for insert, update, change? Is it one where you pass a parameter? We just have no way of knowing that, so there's no way to automate that. But you could just using a little xbasic function. And currently, if you're using a check that out, by the way. Look at that right there. If you're using a web API and you want to kind of link a list to a web API, same kind of concept is that you would write a little stub function to call those web APIs. And again, that's all part of what we're trying to make it easier and easier to do that. So you can see now I've got TransForm right here. I put in my API key and I can go right in and do my form fields and everything else within here and pull it right there. I'm not doing it right now because I haven't experimented when it's brand new there. So TransForm will be as easy as SQL. But a stored procedure, you'd have to use custom, and then obviously if you're doing web APIs. But we're even researching some areas where maybe there's ways to connect to web APIs. One thing that, and we mentioned it before, is that more and more with the new open standard, there's more and more sort of structure. REST APIs were the Wild West. Everybody just kind of made them up as they went, and they worked, they were great. But now more and more there's sort of standards getting put in place and other things like that to specify standard functional behaviors and how they do it so that it's easier for us to automatically generate integrations and code to do those things. But for your case, I would look at doing a custom function. Again, calling a stored procedure is very easy in XBasic. There's some great documentation online, and this function would only take maybe a little bit to put together, and then you could use a stored procedure to do those pieces between them. The one thing I'm going to put a caveat in there is that when you use SQL, we automatically understand how to do data conflict management. So when you update a record on the mobile device and then you say, okay, I'm ready to apply that update to the database, in the world of SQL, we can automatically understand how to, we can query it, compare them, change them, all that stuff. In the world of using a stored procedure or something like that, you're going to need to you're going to be the one checking that conflict and resolving it as it sees fit. So a little bit more work around that also. We just want to get you prepared for it.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Couple other things that we have questions on. First of all, for those of you who are interested in the GitHub information, I believe that the GitHub webinar is now posted up on YouTube and will be on our in our new video library, which will be posted very soon. It's currently in beta. We're just making it run a little faster before we post it live, but it is working, which is great. Also, Sarah in the chat window has posted documentation for source control. If you're interested in using source control with Alpha Anywhere, we do have some information on how to do that in the documentation.
And there's one other really important reason why you kind of want to start to get your hands dirty and just get comfortable with source control is that we're starting to build more and more content to help our developer community, and we're going to start distributing that through repositories because it's a really effective way for us to manage that process. And Dave, you might want to speak to that, is that we have our own GitHub account, which you can, and we'll put up sample code and other stuff. So we're moving that direction also.
That's right. If you go to github.com/alphaanywhere, so github.com/alphaanywhere, and all goes right, there are some examples of components and even full applications that you can just grab and start playing with.
And I'll tell you, we're going to be pulling this, as you can see, we're just kind of getting our hands dirty on this stuff. But so you'll be able to go in here, clone or download, go into Sourcetree, I can show you real quick. I'm just going to go right here, watch this. I'm going to go in here to Sourcetree. Again, you could do this command line. Actually, I was working with someone this week who did, he goes, Sourcetree is a pain. I'm just going to use a bash interface. And I was like, whatever floats your boat. That's all good.
Good for them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was like, you're more of a man than I am,
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to go here. I'm going to say copy this. Okay, so I'm going to go in here. I'm going to say I'm going to add one. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to create one. The destination path is where I want it to be. So I'll create a new folder here. And that will go in here, okay? And I'm going to create that. Oh, no, I'm sorry. My mistake. Sorry, as you can see, I'm getting good at this too there. So I'm going to get a new folder and delete that here. Okay, no, what I want to do is I want to go in here and I want to go File, Clone. I want to clone that. And then I want to put that. Let's go ahead and go into my alpha. I'll create a new folder here. I'll go test git. Okay, and you'd give it something a little bit more, and I'll select the folder here. So I've set where I'm getting it from, where it should go to, what its name is. I'm going to click clone, and if this works properly, guess what? Now I can go into alpha, open workspace. I go to alpha, go to test git, I believe was what it's called. Okay. And go here, web projects, ready to go. I've got an email demo, any and everything set up, ready to go, etc. Look, Chris Martin, good man. As you can see, boom. Now I can say, oh great, I understand how this. I can copy this, put it in my own project or do anything like that. And we're going to have the complete history of everything that changed. So as these will be living and breathing. So as we add new functionality. So let's say in a month, Dave goes in and updates this and adds maybe a new page or a new function or a new way to do something. You'll be able to come in here and just pull the latest version. And that would just bring it down, go back into alpha, and you'll have the latest and greatest version. So versus sending you zip files, downloading them, unzipping, all that stuff, and vice versa, we're going to be able to allow you to in the future. We're hoping to build the community so we could have sort of open source, that's a bad word, but community projects where, we say, hey, we're building a standard this, and people will be able to contribute because we can control that process saying, sure, what you can do, which is kind of fun in Source, is that if I make a change, I can ask to say, hey, I'd like to make this change part of the primary repository up there. And if it's approved by Dave who runs it, he'll say, oh yeah, those are good changes, let's add them in there. Then we'll be able to push that. So we can start sharing code a lot more effectively and techniques and capabilities and neat new stuff like that. And that's how most companies do it. That's just the way to do it. We can be more effective there. And that's through using the new, or well, it's been around for a while, but promoting the use of a public repository structure for our development community. And if you have ideas for ones that should be up there, if you have solutions you want to contribute, send to guides@alphasoftware.com. We want to promote that and work with that and share the wealth across everybody's capabilities and accelerate everybody's learning and capabilities. So pretty fun stuff. You can see there's 18 repositories currently in there available at this time, with even our project punch list, inspection solution. But again, all about, hey, I want to try this, download it, put it there, and start running.
Yep, sure can. Excellent. A couple more questions. This one's kind of cool, so I want to talk about this one first. And this person is interested to know, could you take GPS coordinates from a marine-based server, which I assume is just a server that's on the water, and overlay the position onto a nautical chart? So in other words, like normal GPS, it shows on roads, it shows on land masses, but what if you had like a picture of a nautical area? Could you do that?
Interesting.
Never worked with that, but
yeah,
there are tools that will do that. And if I recall, sort of the technology behind it is that you give it the image that you want, let's say the nautical chart, and you define that the top left corner of this chart is at this GPS Latin lon, and the bottom right is at this GPS Latin lon, and then it plots it right on there. I have not used those tools. I've looked into them, but I've never actually gotten to play with them. I don't know if you have any experience with that, but it is possible. So if you want to if you're really interested in that, send an email over to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com, and I'll put the word out and see what people are using for that type of mapping. I think that would be very cool.
Yes, very, very cool.
Here are two questions. In both cases, it was someone who changed something and says, "Oh boy, this is going to be a big can of worms." So we'll start here with this person. They want to change a table name. So in other words, in their database, let's say they had spelled customers wrong. They had spelled it with a K instead of a C, but they already built their grid. They already built their UX. Do they just basically have to go into those grids and UXs and just redefine the query and point it to the new thing? There's no real easy way to say, "Oh, I've changed a table name." Or something like that.
I mean, potentially, when you have a UX, let me go ahead and see. Make this right here. Is that a UX? Yeah. Okay. Potentially, what you can do is, let me go ahead and close that and reopen it. It's just having a refresh issue here. You might be able to use XBasic to do a find and replace, but I think that would be very dangerous. It's worth a try, especially on UXs. On grids, in that case, let me go to my demonstration. Okay. Go here, go in here to a grid. Again, we have the XBasic here, so potentially you should be able, because notice in here, here's the connection string, here's the SQL connect. Let's say I'm changing contact name from C here to K, and then I could search this all and find anywhere it uses that word from there. Can't guarantee it works. I've never done it myself. I just am throwing that out as a potential way to handle it. If not, the way you're going to have to do it is just go into the query, connect, hit refresh, then you'll go here and you'll see on there, you'll see an error right here because it won't find the grids, and you have to do it in the search here. So it actually, if it's a small changes, it's not bad, but you got to kind of track down because it could be in your grid, in your UX, and then if you have any XBasic code. Now, if you're trying to find out where you reference customer code, there is a trick. You can go File, where is it? Search in all web project files and search for a customer code. And then what will happen is it's going to search in all files and find where that's specified. And then if you're changing that from one thing to another, you just keep coming back here to search and hunt down wherever you use that. So for instance, here's the query in this callback demo. Select star from customer or customer code. So now I can go there and I can say edit the object, and I'm right there, and it takes me right to where I need to go. Here's the customer grid. Okay, I see. So I edit that object. Now I'm kind of in. I have to go through and modify and do some stuff. I have to go to the query. So there. But let's look at a UX here. And let's go. But you can see that I think is part of the, I think if I go to that, then where it actually is is there's where it's referenced there too, but also in my data binding, I have to search there. So this will help you find where that reference is at, and again, where you get that is called edit, search in all web project files. So at least you don't have to kind of say, did I get everything? Because if you do change it from one term to another, you can keep searching there, and you should see as you change things, as you clean it up, you won't see those references anymore in your project. So that way you can kind of get a warm and fuzzy that you've gone through there. But it is a bit of a manual process. There's no real refactoring concept built into it, within the tool.
Great. And let's see, we have about 50 seconds left, so let's see what last question we can get in. Here we go.
Before hypothermia is fully integrated.
Yes. All right, so here's a person who switched their project style, their style sheet from GR Blue to Alpha, and it just became a big mess. And I said, is there an easy way to switch between styles without having to restyle everything manually? And maybe you could speak about why maybe it was a little bit of a mess going from GR Blue to Alpha in terms of the age of those templates.
Yeah, GR Blue is an old school kind of scenario. Well, the most important thing to realize whenever you're doing it here in the style name is I always use project style, meaning what I do is any UX or grid, I set the style name to be used project style. So therefore, whenever I need to change styles, I do it at one place, which is at the project properties. I can select the project style. So I can go in here and change it to whatever it happens to be from there. And therefore, boom, it ripples through the whole kit and caboodle from there. Now, with that, you can, so the other aspect that I think is worthwhile is that in our style builder, I can select there and click OK, and I can change it, but you can use SAS to modify your styles. And you really want to try and use SAS as much as humanly possible to kind of modify your styles. And then last but not least, and we're going to have these guys on very soon, there's actually a company, and I want to get things a little bit readier or a little bit more ready before we do it, but there's actually a company that is helping to come up with new styles for Alpha, and more importantly, to build custom styles for people. So styles can be, they're not the simplest things in the world. There's a lot to it just because there's so many styles and they're all over the place. But we have some experts that are ramping up in terms of being able to say, hey, why don't you just go build me a style and give it back to me, or take this one and tweak it. And in the end, that might be the most simple kind of scenario there. But the important thing I think to remember is always try and keep your style to be project style. That way you don't have to go through every UX and grid. If you change it, you can do it one place and it ripples throughout your there. Stick with the newer styles like Alpha because they are SAS. Therefore, they're easier to change, do from there. Now, you will see they're a lot more web and mobile oriented, so they're broader. They're not as dense as, say, our original GR Blue, GR Gray, and stuff like that. But again, I anticipate this year we'll see some more new styles come out, and also some third parties are working on bringing in some new styles using Bootstrap themes and things like that. So we're pretty excited on there. So I hope that gives a little pointer about how to minimize the pain of that process. But styles can be a little tricky just because of the nature of how they work and making sure they look good and everything else.
That is terrific. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you.
That concludes today's webcast. I want to thank everyone who participated, especially those folks who asked questions. They are what keep this session lively and interesting and help other people to learn. So we hope to see you at a future webcast. Today's webcast will be available in a couple of days at YouTube and soon at the new Alpha Software video library. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please send them to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. Thanks again. Take care. Hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.